And Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. In Luke 19:10 it says, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. It's right after the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and he was using his position to exploit people around him. He encounters Jesus. His life is turned completely upside down. And then in that encounter with Jesus, his life is restored to alignment of the kingdom. And Jesus, shortly thereafter, says, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. In the innate nature of Jesus is such a depth of love that goes after the lost. In such a way that as his kids, if we're reflecting that innate nature, it'll compel us by love to go after those that are lost. He could have stayed in heaven. He could have left us in our mess. Yet he said, I'm going to step out of heaven. I'm going to step into human flesh, and I'm going to go after my beloved. And we get to take on that same compassion, that same depth of love, to step into the same mission of Jesus, to seek and to save the lost. That his kingdom would be reestablished in each one of our lives, throughout our communities, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, our nations. Every tribe, tongue, and nation. In a moment, we're going to talk about the purpose of a mission. But we're starting a new series today. The series is called The 300. We've been talking a lot about Gideon's 300 lately. We've talked about it several times. We see this picture where Gideon did not see himself as God made him to be, did not see himself how God saw him. And yet he was called out as a mighty man of valor. He was called out of a victim mentality that it would otherwise say, God has forsaken you, everyone's against you, you're the least of your family, God could never use you. And an angel of the Lord comes and says, you mighty man of valor. The same way that he comes to each one of us and calls you a mighty man of valor, a mighty woman of valor, and wants to display his wonders through you. Looking for those who would yield themselves to him in such a way that he could work wonders through you, through his beloved. He leads Gideon to go down and tear down every other idol. In the same way that he invites us to tear down every other idol, every other thing that could vie for our attention, our affection, anything that would be placed above Jesus, strip it down. He says, I want to do something through you, but in my kingdom, there's only one king, King Jesus. Then it says Gideon was clothed with the Spirit of God. In this house, we recognize that if we're ever going to walk in the fullness of what he calls us to, we have to be clothed with his Spirit. There's no amount of effort, there's no amount of strength, there's no amount of human intellect that we could muster ourselves. Even our raw talents and abilities cannot replace the Spirit of the living God on us, clothing us for his purposes. And then we see him faithfully listening and obeying the instruction of the Lord. Even as the Lord whittles down his army to 300 people, God literally says, even though you're already outnumbered, if you had 30,000 people, you would still think it was because of you that you won this battle. So he whittles it all the way down to 300 people. God's saying, I want to display my glory in such a way that it couldn't be attributed to man's strength. And how we're in this season where we desire to be set apart for God's purposes. That we'd be here saying, here we are, God, send us, like Isaiah says. Here I am, God, send me. I'm going to step into who you've called me to be. I'll strip down every other idol. I want to be clothed by your Spirit. I'll listen and obey. God, would you use me for whatever you would have me for? That in this season, we're looking for those who have that heart posture. And it's not an excluding of anyone. It's a call to rise to the occasion. Each one of us can do those 4 things. Each one of those, with a surrendered heart, can do those 4 things and posture ourselves to be used by God. But we're going to use this analogy of the 300, a little different than the story of Gideon. But for the sake of the analogy, when you have a team, let's say it's a search and rescue crew, everybody has a purpose on that crew. When you have a special ops unit, everybody has a purpose on that unit. When we're part of a mission, everyone has a purpose in that mission. And in this series, we're going to look at, first, what is the purpose of a mission? Why is a mission so important? If we're not clear on what our mission is, our God-given calling or mission or purpose in the season, how does that keep us from actually stepping into what he has for us? If we don't know what he's calling us to, you probably heard someone say, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. So what's the purpose of a mission? We're going to talk about that today. In weeks to come, we're going to talk about how do we find our personal purpose? What's my purpose? How does my life fit into a mission that might cover a church or cover a family? What part am I? How do I figure that out? We're going to talk about what's the purpose of a team. We're going to talk about how God's gifted us differently. Different parts of the body. Different parts of the fivefold ministry. God, how do you take our giftings and actually make something beautiful from it? Something more beautiful than if we just segregated ourselves based off of how we think and how we're gifted. If we press into the beauty that God has when he actually weaves together a tapestry of people that don't come from the same background, that don't come from the same ethnicity, that don't come from the same viewpoints or ideologies, but come under the banner of Christ. That's actually when Jesus is praying in John 17, he prays for the unity of believers, that there be such a unity that it would show the world that Jesus is actually the Son of God. That in a world that is so divided, so conflicted, they would look at a body of people and say, how could those people be so united when they all look so different and come from different backgrounds and different perspectives? There has to be a God. There has to be something greater than each of us for that to happen. We're going to look at what's the purpose of leaders. Because in this context, if we believe that we're on a mission that God has given us, we have to understand the purpose of all these different facets of a team, of a family, of a unit, of a search and rescue team, so to speak. It's an opportunity for all of us to rise to the occasion that God has placed before us. But a vision's important. We read it in Scripture, Proverbs 29:18, where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law. Where there is no prophetic vision, people cast off restraint. What is this? What's this all for? In King James, it says, where there is no vision, people perish. We read in other places in Proverbs, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end leads to death. So not only is vision important, not only is knowing what we're going after important, but the right vision is important. You have the wrong vision, it can lead you straight to death, the way that seems right. So we not only want vision, but we want God's vision. We not only want to know our mission, but we want to know God's mission for us. Without a mission, without a purpose, without a vision, we wander. We see that with the Israelites in the wilderness. They wandered around until they died in the desert. They wandered around until they died in the desert. And actually what happened is their vision, their mission, their purpose, their perspective became themselves. They started operating in ways that seemed right to them. We talked about that self-preservation. It seemed right. We got to protect our kids. We can't go to the promised land. They're giants. There's a way that seemed right. Their vision, their mission became themselves. And they wandered around and died in the wilderness. when God actually wanted to give a different vision. He actually expressed that vision. He has expressed that purpose, saying, I have plans and purposes for you that are far greater than wandering around in the desert. Are you willing to step into my vision for your life? Here at Hope, we have a mission and a vision statement. Our vision statement is to be a catalyst in the greatest multi-generational revival that this city has ever seen. The greatest multi-generational revival this city has ever seen. A catalyst. We say this all the time. We're not the end-all be-all, but we believe God has called us to be a catalyst. We believe God has called us to go places that other people won't. Our desire is that we would see churches across this city take up the responsibility, the mission, the purpose that God has given them. Not to please people, but to be part of what God is calling us to do as the bride of Christ in this region, to be part of cultivating the garden He's given us to cultivate. We put multi-generational in there because we believe there's a calling that has to be multi-generational. It has to span all the generations. It has to span different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different perspectives. The full bride of Christ. Not just segments of the bride of Christ. If this city is going to change, it's going to involve all generations in this city. Our mission is to raise up and send out disciples, not congregants. Raise up and send out disciples who genuinely know Jesus, reflect His nature, and walk in His footsteps. To raise up and send out disciples. Not just that we would teach people a lot of things that they never actually go and take out of the building, but they're raised up and sent out on a daily basis, a weekly basis, raised up and sent out disciples who genuinely know Jesus. Not just who go to church, not just who know right answers, but genuinely know the heart of Jesus. Know Him personally. Who genuinely reflect His nature. Notice it doesn't say who are genuinely nice Christians. Who genuinely reflect the fullness of His nature, and who walk in His footsteps. I preached a while back on first century culture with the rabbi and disciple relationship, and this saying from first few centuries of may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. May you follow your rabbi so closely that even the dust that's kicked up from his feet would be caked on you. That you're so in step with him. May you be covered by the dust of your rabbi. You know, it wasn't actually intentional that we have our membership class today, but it worked out kind of well, actually. Because it's so important that as a body, we're aligning ourselves to the mission that God's given us. Not that we're coming with all of our own missions and trying to get our way, but we're aligning ourselves to something that's greater than all of us. Greater than myself, greater than our leadership team, our elders, greater than any individual. But we're saying, God, we yield to you. We humble ourselves before you, and we humble ourselves in such a way that we align to your purposes. I think too often in America, we've got this consumer mindset that says, I'm just going to go visit a bunch of churches and I'm going to see what I like, and then I'll make a decision of what is, in my opinion, the best place to go. What fits most of my expectations. And we either go from one to the next and we try their coffee and say, you know, that other church isn't that good, but the stirring here is amazing. Or we go and we say, well, the worship here is pretty good, but it's not as good here, but the preacher is better there, but the men's ministry is good here. And so we just kind of like slice and dice everything to say, okay, what's the best place for me? What fits my interests the most? And we forget the most important part about deciding where we're going to root ourselves in the body of Christ. Sarah says it all the time. But what is God saying? I get all the things, I get all the pros and cons and balances and things, but what is God saying? What is the mission that he's calling you to align with? So when we have these membership classes, you don't have to be dead set on becoming a member here to go to the membership class. You can go and just learn about who we are, where we're going, how we operate. But it's an important step, especially in the American church, to say, okay, God, where is this body, where is this family going? And is it a mission that you've called me to be a part of, to yield to humble myself and align with in this season? Whether or not I like the coffee, whether or not it fits all my expectations, whether or not it's the best preacher or the best worship or the best whatever ministry. God, what are you saying? So I encourage you, if you're looking for a place to be rooted, come. It's in the church house right across the parking lot in the church office. There's lunch. You can hear about who we are, where we're going. And I encourage you, if God's not calling you to align here, that's okay. It really is. But find where he's calling you to align. Don't take that American approach where it says, well, I'm going to go to the worship service here, and I'm going to go to the youth group there, and then I'm going to go to this event at that church. And then we say, like, well, it's about unity in the body of Christ. I'm all for that. But you're not rooted anywhere. You're not part of anything. You're just consuming. So find where God is calling you to be rooted. You can still go to the other church's worship service. That's fine. But where are you rooted? Where are you known? Where are you transparent? Where do you have people that can speak the tough truth into your life to say, hey, I see this in you. Yes. Rise to the occasion. Come on. But just because we have a mission statement posted on our website or posted on our wall, just because we have values in the lobby wall, doesn't mean anything. There are plenty of organizations that have well-posted mission and vision statements, and they're not even on mission towards those things. It's just a nice slogan. Think of Enron, right? Early 2000s, big tech company, booming. Integrity was one of their core values. Integrity. And then it got found out that they were committing fraud at the level of billions of dollars. But they had integrity posted on their wall. What's posted on your wall doesn't mean anything. It's what we walk out as a body of people. So what's the purpose of a mission? It gives us a baseline to align ourselves with as God takes us on the journey of becoming all that he's made us to be. It could be at a personal level. God, where have you called me to be? If you called me to be at Hope, how do I align? What's my purpose within the mission at Hope? What part of the body am I? Because if we don't have that perspective, then we can just end up wandering. We come on Sunday, we leave on Sunday, and we never actually step into, God, what am I here for? When in reality, he has a distinct purpose for each person that's called to be in this body in this season. A distinct role, a distinct purpose. There's no one that's meant to just be a bystander here. Walking with Jesus is not a spectator sport. But it requires us to really lean in and learn it and figure out, God, what have you made me to be? Who have you made me to be? Where have you called me in this season? Where have you called my marriage? Where have you called my family? Where have you called me in this business you called me to start? Where have you called me in this ministry? Where have you called me in this church? A clear mission and vision give us perspective by which to make decisions about our time, about our resources, about directions that we go or don't go. If we don't know where we're going, we don't know where to put our time and resources. We don't know what decisions to make or not make. But when we know where God's called us, it gives us a baseline by which to respond to the details that he leads us through. So for instance, Jesus says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything beyond yes or no is from the evil one. Yet if we don't know where we're going, it'll just be based off of the circumstances, the availability, and how we feel. I might say yes one day and no the next day, and I might still be in the same place a year from now. But if I've taken the time to seek out, God, what have you called me to in this season? Then I have a framework for which my yes should be yes. I have a framework for which my no should be no. Then I'm not feeling guilty for saying no, because my no actually opens up the opportunity for me to say yes to what I'm supposed to say yes to. I'm not just throwing randomly at a dartboard. But I protect my yeses because that allows me to actually be where God's called me to be. And I can confidently say no, not because I don't want to help with all these other things, but I can say, that's not where I'm supposed to be putting my time and resources right now. I want to be a good steward of the things God's called me to say yes to in this season. And it gives us the freedom as a body to trust each other. If Michelle just says, hey, no, unfortunately, I don't feel like I'm supposed to do that. I feel like I'm supposed to say yes over here. I can be like, great, I want Michelle to be where she's called to in this season. No body of believers ever gets into the fullness of what God's calling us when we're all trying to appease each other with our yeses and nos. But when we're yielded to Christ, when we humble ourselves to a mission, when we humble ourselves to each other and we say, I'm going to find out where God is calling me to be part of this tapestry, this picture. Yeah. And I'm going to steward it well. So when I say yes, people know I say yes. They can count on my yes. When I say no, people know that I've sought the Lord, and they can trust that's not where God's calling me right now. And it allows us to function in that purpose that we have in each season. Same with resources. If we don't know what we're called to, then we won't know how to use resources, whether that's at a church level, a ministry level, or a personal level. But when we know what we're called to, then our resources are simply something that we align to what God's called us to. I've got this tree in my front yard in Arizona. And at the base of the tree, if it hasn't been trimmed, you'll see all these sprouts coming from the trunk. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll look at that tree and be like, man, it is growing everywhere. It's growing out the ears. That's amazing. When in reality, each one of those sprouts around the trunk is taking energy and resources from the plant that should otherwise go towards bearing fruit. And those sprouts will never bear fruit. So there's something that you have to do in gardening where you prune things so that the resources are going to the right places. So we're not just a body of people that say, man, there's so many different things going on and so many things budding and bursting. And yet, are we actually growing in the main thing that God's called us to? There's 100 different ministries we could be part of. There's 100 different pursuits. There's thousands of places that our resources and time could go. But what if some of those are just the shoots? We can't even give enough time and resources for there to be fruit, and so it just ends up taking away resources from the main thing that we've been called to. When we know what we're called to, when we know our mission, it allows us to align our resources, to align our time with that calling. Same with decisions. There is a heavy mantle on leadership to make decisions that the Lord is initiating. Not to make decisions that will lead to the most people staying at a church. I think it's a disservice when leaders ignore the voice of God because they are not willing to pay the price that man might put on them. Where they say, man, I feel like God's calling us in this direction, but if we do, I know people are going to walk, people aren't going to tithe anymore, or whatever. It's the responsibility of a leader to say, I am submitted to the one who makes the calls. That is, the leadership here is the elders that have been given responsibility of this house seek the Lord, and we come to an agreement, this is what the Lord's doing. It would be a disservice for us to ignore the voice of God out of fear of man. And yet it happens all the time in churches in America. It's easier to just do what will keep people in their seats than to actually say yes to God no matter what it costs. I believe a good leader will say, man, when I surround myself with good counsel and we recognize that the Lord is leading us somewhere, it doesn't matter if 95% of the congregation walks. If it's God, we'll run with that 5%. When we know what we're called to, we align our decisions, we align our resources, we align our time with what we've been called to. It gives us direction. Now, Jesus was incredibly missional. He was incredibly purposeful. And we're going to look at a few instances where he sent people out on missions. We're not going to go there for the sake of time, but in Matthew 4, Jesus is calling the first of his disciples. He's calling Peter and Andrew. They're fishing. They're fishermen. They came from a line of fishermen. They didn't make it through the Jewish schools that would basically allow them to study under a rabbi. They didn't make the cut. And so they're going back to whatever their family trade is. And this rabbi, Jesus, comes along and he says, come, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. Notice what Jesus didn't say to these fishermen. He didn't come up to them and say, what are you guys looking for in a rabbi? He didn't come up and say, I'm thinking of opening this new synagogue, and I just want to get some feedback of what you guys want in a synagogue. He didn't go, hey, I've been toying with this secular term ecclesia, and I just want to do a little focus group to see how it would be received by society. He said, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. He said, come, follow me. And I'll transform you into something. I'll transform you into fishers of men, which is the likeness of Jesus. He came to receive men. He came to seek and to save the lost. He says, come follow me. I'll transform you into my likeness, what you were made for. And some responded to the invitation. Some didn't respond to the invitation. He didn't chase them down. Some followed him for a little while. Then he said some things that were difficult to hear, and he let them walk. He was looking for who was truly responding to his call, who was truly desiring to be part of his mission. So let's turn to Matthew 10. So Jesus was on mission, and he invited disciples to come on mission with him. We get to Matthew chapter 10, and he's sending out the 12. He's sending them out and saying, hey, you've seen me do some things. You've heard me teach. Now it's your shot to go and walk in it. Matthew 10, starting in verse 1, it says, and he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every affliction. Every disease and every affliction. He's about to send them out, and he first gives them authority. You know that Jesus will never send you on a mission that he's not willing to back you in authority with. Whenever he sends you on a mission, he will give you his authority to accomplish the mission. It's like we talked about last week with storms. If we know where we're called, it gives us that much more confidence in a storm. I know I'm where God's calling me. He's given me authority to cross this lake. So no matter what the storm does, no matter how it blows me into the middle of the lake, I know I'm called. He's about to send them out, literally, into the wolves, as he's about to say. But he says, I have given you authority over every disease, every spirit, every affliction, as you go. Let's jump down to verse 5 for the sake of time. He names the 12 disciples, then we get to verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without paying, give without pay. Acquire no gold or silver or copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics, or sandals, or a staff. For the laborer deserves his food. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay there until you depart. As you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. So Jesus is sending these disciples out laser focused. He gives them the authority. Then he gives them clear instructions. He says, go nowhere among the Gentiles or the Samaritans. Salvation would come through the house of Israel. God would fulfill his promises. And Jesus knew the purpose was to go to Israel right now. And he gives them those clear instructions. And you can say, well, Jesus, what about the Gentiles? What about the Samaritans? Samaritans are kind of half Jews. Jesus is saying, we're fulfilling the purpose. We're fulfilling the promise that God set out hundreds and thousands of years before this moment. He says, we're going to fulfill the purposes that I'm here for, the mission that I'm here for. He says, go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus went and preached the kingdom, and he sent the disciples to preach the kingdom and demonstrate the kingdom through what they did. Healing the sick, cleansing the lepers, raising the dead, casting out demons. He set a high bar. And it's a bar that oftentimes people try and water down. Well, that was just for the book of Acts, or that was just for this or that, or I haven't seen that in my life. I would rather trust God at his word than bring the bar down to what my experience is. I don't think we have the authority to lower the bar that Jesus set, but we have the opportunity to be willing to allow him to grow our faith, grow our expectation to be raised to the bar that he set. That he actually is a God of his word. That we actually have been sent with authority to do the things that he's called us to. He says, you have received without paying, give without pay. He's saying everything you've received has been free. You're not going out trying to give it away for something that you can gain or attain or some reputation or something that you can claim for yourself. He said, you receive this grace completely free. Now he's saying, go after those who haven't tasted this grace yet. Go give away what you received freely yourself. But verse 11 is strange. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it and stay there until you depart. Who is worthy? Let your peace rest on that house. And if you're not received, if this person that you encounter is not worthy, if they're not receptive, if they're not humble, if they're not hungry, if they don't want what you have to share, just simply let your peace return to you and keep moving. You don't have to take it personally. You don't have to let it beat you down. You don't have to let it get you in the ditch for day after day. You freely received. Go freely give it away. Look for those who are actually hungry for what you have to give. And it sounds kind of harsh. But he says, shake the dust off your feet. If what you're giving isn't received, shake the dust off your feet. Keep your focus on the mission of why I'm sending you. Let's turn to Luke 10. Luke 10 is a similar passage, different instance, but Jesus instructs this group similarly to how he instructed the 12. Now it's a group of 72. He's sending them out 2 by 2. He starts in verse 1 of chapter 10. And it says, after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way. Behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. If a son of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you. And remain in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide. For the laborers deserves his wages. Do not go from house to house. Whenever you enter a town and they receive you, eat what is set before you. Heal the sick in it, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come near to you. But whenever you enter a town and they do not receive you, go into the streets and say, even the dust of your town that clings to our feet we wipe off against you. Nevertheless, know this, that the kingdom of God has come near. I tell you, it will be more bearable on the day of Sodom than for that town. So we see in both these passages, Jesus is pretty fierce. He says some things in here that make us uncomfortable. They don't seem all that nice. They don't seem all that caring. And yet Jesus is laser focused on what he's here for. And he completely recognizes that each person has the choice of whether or not they're going to receive or deny what's being proclaimed. And he's commissioning his disciples, both the 12 and the 72, to go and look for those who are hungry for the kingdom of heaven. He says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. I believe it's the same in Seattle. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Sometimes we try and check ourselves out by saying, oh, people in Seattle really don't want the gospel, and we just really need to band together and hold together and all this. I believe actually people in Seattle are very hungry. I believe there's a shifting, there's a softening that's going on in Seattle in this very season. I tell people all the time, if Seattle was, as a city, was the prodigal son, I believe it's the prodigal son eating the pods of the pigs and wondering, maybe I could go back to my father. That's where I think Seattle's at right now. They're eating the pods. They've gone after every other gratification. They've gone after every other satisfaction, and they've realized they're just as empty as they were when they began, except more wounded. And there's the thought in a lot of people's minds all across Seattle, especially young people, thinking, maybe I could go back to my father's house. I believe the harvest is plentiful in Seattle. It's about the workers rising up and partnering with God in the harvest. But he says that oh so reassuring statement, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Isn't that what you want to hear when you're going out on mission with Jesus? Lambs in the midst of wolves. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't say that it's all going to be easy. He says, no, actually, being on mission with Jesus is going to be really hard. You're going to be lambs in the midst of wolves, yet you're going to be lambs that have been given the authority of the King of Kings, the spotless lamb. Lambs that have been given authority not to just be at the mercy of wolves like they are in the world, but that his kingdom actually turns the world upside down to where lambs reign over wolves in his kingdom. And we establish his kingdom on earth. But he says this peculiar phrase. He's instructing them carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals. And he says, greet no one on the road. Well, Jesus, that seems kind of impolite, if you ask me. Aren't we supposed to be nice? Aren't we supposed to greet people? Aren't we supposed to, stop? Jesus, you stopped for people. What is he saying there? He says, on the way to the mission that I'm sending you on, there's going to be things that could take your time and resources that are not your mission. Keep your focus on the mission. Know that I'm your provider. Don't take all this extra stuff. I'll provide for you along the way. But be very careful not to get distracted on the way to your mission. I've got plans and purposes for you, but you won't get there if you're stopping at every distraction along the way. So he says, don't greet anyone along the way. He says, similarly, whenever you enter whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. If a son of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you. Again, we're looking for this worthy person. We're looking for this man of peace. We're looking for this person who's hungry and receptive, that we would actually pour into those places of hunger rather than try and con all these people that aren't hungry into the church. One thing in discipleship that you can't do for someone is you can't make them hungry. You can lead them to water. You can display and proclaim the gospel. You can be an example of Jesus, but if they're not hungry, they're not going to walk with you in discipleship. Sometimes we try and disciple people who are not hungry to be discipled. In reality, we have to recognize, is this a person who is hungry? Is this a person who is receptive? Is this a person who wants to be discipled? Otherwise, if we just keep trying to rally them in, we'll be spending all of our time trying to rally in the people that aren't hungry, when the people who actually would be hungry are left out there and they've never even heard the gospel. So he's saying, be laser focused at where you're putting your time. Look for the man of peace. Look for the one who's hungry. And those who aren't hungry, it doesn't mean you just disown them. There are all kinds of people that I'll circle back to. They might not be hungry. They might have hard hearts right now. But 6 months from now, might not be the case. But being strategic, like Jesus says, as shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves, are we on the mission that God's calling us to be on? I find it interesting how he says, stay in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide, for the laborer deserves his wages. Do not go from house to house. I think, but Jesus, aren't we trying to talk to as many people as possible? Yes, God doesn't desire that anyone would perish. But here's the thing. Proclaiming a message is much easier than discipling someone. If we think the end goal is throwing a message at someone and then moving on to the next person, we'll leave that seed on the dry ground to be picked off by the birds. But he says, when you go into a house and a person is worthy, when they're receptive, let your peace reside on their home, and don't just rush off to the next thing. Keep sowing, keep watering, as long as that hunger is being cultivated. Don't just rush to the next thing where that seed dies because it never actually took root. And then again, he says, if people aren't going to receive it, don't hold it on yourself. Wipe the dust off your feet. It's not because Jesus doesn't care about those that are rejecting the message, but he recognizes there are others who are hungry for the message. So in each of these cases, Jesus is inviting people into the mission that he came to establish, and then sending people to co-labor with him, with his Spirit upon them. That Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. And as we experience the grace and the love and the redemption of Jesus, we get to step in and co-labor with him in that mission, to seek and to save the lost. We get to join the search and rescue crew. But your mission determines how you operate as a group or as a person. A search and rescue ship operates very differently than a cruise ship. They're both ships, but they have different missions. Don't get me wrong, I think cruises are cool. And I'm all for, rest and rejuvenation and taking a vacation. But I think too many churches have become cruise ships when we're actually called to be search and rescue ships. A church operates differently based on the mission that it's aligned to. A church uses its time and resources and makes decisions differently based on the mission that it's aligned to. A search and rescue ship is on a mission. A cruise ship is on an excursion. A search and rescue ship responds to needs. A cruise ship is responding to the preferences and the desires of their customers. I think too often, churches are more concerned about the complaints of their people than the commands of God. A search and rescue ship returns with more people. It's just its nature. A cruise ship takes the same people and ends up right back where it started. On a search and rescue ship, everyone has a distinct purpose. There's nobody that's just there to be there. Walking with Jesus is not a spectator sport. But on a cruise ship, you don't have to have a role just as long as you keep paying. Think about that for a moment. How many churches are making decisions simply by how many people they can keep in the seats and keep tithing? What a disservice if our leaders are leading our churches to become like cruise ships when we're meant to partner with Jesus and his mission as a search and rescue ship on this earth. And how much more exciting and fulfilling and life-giving is it to be part of the mission with Jesus, locking arms with Jesus, discovering what he's made us for in a body. Let's turn real quick to Matthew 28. We saw that when Jesus was calling his disciples, he was inviting the disciples into his mission. Then he sent the 12 out on mission. Then he sent the 72 out on mission. The same way that he is calling you into a purpose, a mission, a calling. Let's turn to Matthew 28. We'll start in verse 18. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always. He sends us out with his Spirit to go and fulfill the mission that he came to establish. He came and was anointed to bring good news to the poor, to open the eyes of the blind, to open prison doors, to set captives free, to mend broken hearts. He came to establish his kingdom and then pour out his Spirit that we could operate with his Spirit flowing inside of us to carry out his kingdom on this earth. You know, when we were reading in Luke 10, it says that he sent him out 2 by 2. And he sent them ahead of him into every town and place where he himself was about to go. That was the first verse of the Luke passage. He sent them into every town that he himself was about to go. We step into the same mission where we recognize he's sent us into the town that he's placed us, into this garden that he's given us to cultivate, because one day the king is returning. He's sending us out into the world that he's going to return to. He's sending us out ahead of him to be salt and light, to carry his Spirit, to establish his kingdom, because he says, I'm coming back. I'm coming back for my kids. I'm coming back for my bride. I'm coming back to establish a new Jerusalem, my kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We get the honor of co-laboring with him in that mission. He's saying, you go establish my kingdom. Go ahead of me and I'll come after you. One day I'm going to walk. The king's going to return and he's going to establish his kingdom in its finality. He conquered sin and death. There'll be a day where there are no more tears. There is no more pain. But all is established in his kingdom with his beloved. But the very end of that verse, we often quote that Great Commission. Notice it's not a great suggestion, it's a great commission. He says, and lo, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Remember that it's a co-mission. It's a co-mission. You can't walk in your commission without being linked in arms with Jesus. You can't do it without him. He's not giving you some mission and saying, hey, go figure it out, accomplish it, and then come back when you're done. He's saying, come with me. Come with me on my mission. Go ahead and stand with me. As we go through this series, we're going to look at different aspects of the purpose that God has for us in the mission that he's called us to. What does that look like when it's our personal role or our personal place in a broader mission? What does it look like in the purpose on a team? What is the purpose of leadership? next week we're going to specifically hone in on how do I find my purpose in this season. You might be looking around at everyone else and think, man, everyone seems to have their purpose, or this person's involved in that, or that person serves here, or this person knows that God called him there. But I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to be a part of. I don't know where I fit in. It is important that as we begin to step into these topics, that we have the humility to go to Jesus first and say, Jesus, I want to co-labor with you. I might not know what that looks like. I might not know where you're going to take me. I might not know all the details. But I want to co-labor with the one who made me. I want to co-labor with the one who created me before I was even born, who knit me together in my mother's womb, who made me his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works which he set out for me before I was even born. Because each person in this room has a calling and a destiny right now in this season. It's not just for someone else. It's not just for another time. It's not just for some time in the past where God did something incredible for you, through you. Right now, he is inviting you to co-labor with him, to co-mission with him. And I just want to extend the invite. If that's you and you're in this season, you're wondering, God, I don't know where I fit in. God, I don't know what my place is in all this. Maybe you're saying, I feel like I'm supposed to be here, but I don't know what I'm even supposed to do here. I come to church on Sunday, I leave on Sunday, but what am I made for? What am I here for? If that's you, I just want you to come up right now. If you're in that season where you're just wondering, Jesus, what would you have of me in this season? Maybe there's all kinds of opportunities. There's all kinds of good things. God doesn't just want you to have a life filled with good things. He's got great things for you. Is there anyone in this room who's saying that, like, I just want to know where I'm supposed to be right now? I invite you to come up. Just take that first step of saying, God, I don't know all the answers. It's a little intimidating because I don't know where you'll take me, but I want to go with you wherever that is. I want to co-mission with you. Anyone else? I don't want to rush by. There's no one in here that God is saying, they're just supposed to be along for the ride. There's no one in here that where God's like, I haven't gotten to their purpose yet. I've set into place other people's purposes, but I just haven't. He's not saying that. Right now, God is saying, I know you. I made you. I wove you together in your mother's womb. And I have purposes for you in this season. I'm going to pray over all of us and dismiss the service, but those of you who have come up, I want you to just remain for a little bit. We're going to open up the altars and bring up our prayer teams, and we want to pray for each one of you specifically. But God, we thank you that you invite us into the purposes of your kingdom. You invite us to co-labor with you in your kingdom. God, I thank you that you've called us for so much more than just being a cruise ship. God, there's going to be times where we go on an adventure with you, and that looks a bunch of different ways. But God, I thank you that you actually bring us into purpose and mission. God, would you draw us out into those places that we wouldn't normally go? We want to be a congregation that goes where other people wouldn't. That stand before you as willing vessels to say, here I am, God, send me. Here we are, God, send us. Send us to the places where other people wouldn't go. Send us to the places where other people would say no. Because, God, it's not about our strength. It's not about our ability. It's simply our willingness to flow with your Spirit. The willingness to surrender to the things of your kingdom. To say yes to the things of your kingdom. So would you come and deposit a fresh wind and a fresh fire inside us this morning? Would you speak life and speak purpose over us personally, over us as a congregation, over us as a family, a team, a unit? that we would step fully into all that you paid for on the cross, stepping fully into the mission that you invite us into. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. Tonight we'll start the unplugged prayer. We're going to